September 4, 2025. International waters, Southern Caribbean. Two Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets scream across the sky at low altitude. Their target, the USS Jason Dunham, an American guided missile destroyer bristling with weapons capable of shooting them out of the air in seconds. The jets roar overhead. Armed. Aggressive. A show of force. Inside the Dunham's Combat Information Center, radar screens track every movement. Fire control systems are online. Fingers hover near triggers. The pilots know the Americans could light them up. The Americans know the Venezuelans know. Neither side blinks. This is the story of the largest U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean since 1965, a deployment of over 10,000 troops, 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, stealth fighters, and strategic bombers. And the boldest challenge Venezuela has thrown at American power in decades. How did we get here? And why didn't the U.S. Navy fire back? To understand this Caribbean standoff, you need to understand Nicolas Maduro. The 62-year-old former bus driver turned dictator has ruled Venezuela since 2013, presiding over one of the most catastrophic economic collapses in modern history. Hyperinflation. Mass starvation. 8 million refugees fleeing the country. But Maduro has survived. Through sanctions, protests, coup attempts, and international condemnation, he's clung to power with the support of Venezuela's military, and increasingly, with the backing of Russia, China, and Cuba. The Trump administration, returning to office in January 2025, immediately made Venezuela a priority. On his first day back in the White House, President Trump designated 9 Latin American drug cartels and criminal organizations as foreign terrorist organizations. 2 of them are based in Venezuela. One is Tren de Aragua, a ruthless gang that controls drug trafficking, human smuggling, and extortion across South America. The U.S. claims Maduro's government doesn't just tolerate them, they profit from them. In 2020, the U.S. Justice Department indicted Maduro on narcoterrorism charges, accusing him of running what they called the Cartel of the Suns, a drug trafficking network embedded within Venezuela's own military leadership. By August 2025, the Trump administration had doubled the bounty on Maduro's head to $50 million, making him one of the most wanted men on the planet. And then, they sent the Navy.
August 14, 2025. Norfolk Naval Station, Virginia. The USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group departs for what the Navy initially calls a regularly scheduled deployment to Europe and Africa. But within days, the ships change course. South. Toward the Caribbean. The Iwo Jima, a massive Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, is joined by 2 San Antonio-class transport docks, the USS San Antonio and USS Fort Lauderdale. Together, they carry over 4,500 personnel, including 2,200 Marines from the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit based at Camp Lejeune. These aren't just transport ships. They're floating invasion platforms. The Iwo Jima carries MV-22 Osprey tiltrotor aircraft and AV-8B Harrier jump jets. The San Antonio-class ships can launch hovercraft for amphibious assaults. They're designed to put boots on the ground, fast. Soon, the amphibious group is joined by an armada, 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, and USS Sampson. The guided missile cruiser USS Lake Erie. The littoral combat ship USS Wichita. And lurking beneath the waves, a Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine, USS Newport News. Silent. Invisible. Lethal. Historian Alan McPherson, an expert on U.S.-Latin American relations, calls it the largest naval buildup in the region since 1965, when President Lyndon B. Johnson sent 42,000 troops to the Dominican Republic during a civil war. The official mission? Counter narcotics. Combat drug trafficking. Target the cartels. But nobody in Caracas believes that. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro addresses his nation on August 19, his voice defiant, "No empire will touch the sacred soil of Venezuela." They are seeking regime change through military threat. Venezuela is confronting the biggest threat that has been seen on our continent in the last 100 years. Maduro orders the mobilization of 4.5 million militia members. Troops are dispatched to the Colombian border. Venezuelan warships and drones patrol the coastline. Military exercises begin in Caracas and coastal states. The Venezuelan Defense Ministry releases footage of Russian-made Sukhoi Su-30 fighters armed with Kh-31 anti-ship missiles. The message is clear: we're ready for war. On August 27th, satellite images confirm the presence of the Iwo Jima amphibious ready group about 340 miles off the Venezuelan coast, moving steadily south through the Caribbean basin. The U.S. has effectively surrounded Venezuela. And then, on September 2nd, 2025, everything changes. President Trump announces from the White House that the U.S. military has struck and sunk a speedboat in international waters off Venezuela. The boat was allegedly carrying drugs. All 11 people aboard are killed. Trump releases video footage of the strike, grainy, infrared imagery showing a small vessel exploding under fire from a U.S. warship. The dead, Trump claims, are members of Tren de Aragua, narco-terrorists, drug smugglers heading for the United States. Venezuelan media tells a different story. The boat came from San Juan de Unare, a small fishing village on Venezuela's northeastern coast. Families publish tributes with photos of the deceased. Some appear to be young fishermen. The town mourns. Secretary of State Marco Rubio doubles down. Instead of interdicting it, on the president's orders, we blew it up. And it'll happen again. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, visiting Puerto Rico on September 8th, tells sailors and Marines, "What you're doing right now, it's not training. This is the real-world exercise on behalf of the vital national interests of the United States of America to end the poisoning of the American people." But the legal justification is murky. Constitutional law experts question whether the strikes violate the War Powers Resolution of 1973, which requires congressional authorization for military action that could provoke war. International law is equally unclear. Can the U.S. sink boats in international waters without proof of their cargo? Without warning? Without attempting arrest? Former U.S. Navy Admiral James Stavridis characterizes the operation as 21st century gunboat diplomacy, a show of force designed to demonstrate American military reach and the vulnerability of Venezuelan assets, particularly oil rigs and government installations. The message to Maduro's inner circle is chilling. We can reach you. Anywhere. Anytime. But Maduro isn't backing down. On September 4th, 2 days after the boat strike, Venezuela makes its boldest move yet. 2 Venezuelan F-16 Fighting Falcons take off from an airbase near Caracas. Their destination, the USS Jason Dunham, patrolling international waters in the southern Caribbean. The F-16s are relics, purchased from the United States back in the 1980s, before relations soured. Venezuela originally bought 24 of them. Years of sanctions and arms embargoes mean spare parts are nearly impossible to obtain. Only 3 or 4 are still airworthy. But they're still dangerous. And they're still armed. At approximately 2 p.m., the F-16s approach the Dunham. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, alarms sound. Radar operators track the incoming aircraft. The ship's Aegis combat system, one of the most advanced air defense networks in the world, paints the jets on every screen. The F-16s descend to low altitude and make an aggressive pass directly over the Dunham. Close enough that sailors on deck can see the Venezuelan Air Force markings. Close enough to count as a direct provocation. Defense officials later describe it as a show of force, a game of chicken at 400 miles per hour. The USS Jason Dunham does not fire. It doesn't lock on with targeting radar. Doesn't launch interceptors. Doesn't even issue a warning over military frequencies. The Venezuelan pilots complete their pass and bank away, disappearing into the Caribbean sky. Minutes later, the Pentagon releases a terse statement. Today, 2 Maduro regime military aircraft flew near a U.S. Navy vessel in international waters. This highly provocative move was designed to interfere with our counter-narco-terror operations. The cartel running Venezuela is strongly advised not to pursue any further effort to obstruct, deter, or interfere with counter-narcotics and counter-terror operations carried out by the U.S. military. The statement is remarkable for what it doesn't say. No threat of retaliation. No declaration of hostile intent. Just a warning, polite, almost diplomatic. Why didn't the US shoot down the F-16s? Legally, the Americans could have. Under the rules of engagement, a foreign military aircraft making an aggressive approach to a warship in international waters can be treated as a threat. But shooting down Venezuelan jets would have been an act of war. And despite the rhetoric, despite the military buildup, despite the strikes on drug boats, the Trump administration doesn't want a war with Venezuela. Not yet, anyway. The real goal, according to analysts and intelligence sources, is pressure. Financial pressure. Military pressure. Psychological pressure. By shutting down the Caribbean drug routes, the US aims to starve Maduro's government of revenue. By demonstrating overwhelming military force, they hope to fracture the loyalty of Venezuela's senior military commanders, many of whom are allegedly profiting from drug trafficking. The strategy is to make Maduro's inner circle afraid. To make them wonder if they'll be the next target of a cruise missile strike. To make them consider whether supporting Maduro is worth dying for. And it's working, at least partially. So what happens next? As of October 2025, the situation remains tense but stable. Neither side has crossed the line into all-out war, but the precedents being set are troubling. The United States has carried out at least 8 airstrikes on vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific Ocean since September, killing at least 32 people. All were allegedly drug traffickers. None were given trials. None were arrested. Critics call it extrajudicial killing. Supporters call it decisive action against narcoterrorism. Venezuela, meanwhile, has demonstrated that it's willing to challenge American military power directly, even with aging, outgunned aircraft. The F-16 overflights were a calculated risk, designed to show Maduro's supporters that he won't be intimidated. But beneath the bravado, both sides are playing a dangerous game. For the US, the risk is escalation. What happens if Venezuela shoots at an American ship? What if a US strike accidentally kills civilians? What if American special forces conducting a raid inside Venezuela are captured? The Trump administration has options. Lots of them. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from submarines. Precision airstrikes from F-35s. Even a targeted decapitation strike, aimed at killing or capturing Maduro himself. But any of those actions could spiral into a broader conflict. Colombia has already warned that an attack on Venezuela would be considered an attack on Latin America. Russia and China, both close allies of Maduro, have condemned US military operations in the Caribbean. For Venezuela, the risk is equally severe. Maduro's military is no match for American firepower. His Russian-made jets and anti-ship missiles might inflict casualties, but they can't stop a full-scale US assault. If the US decides to go all in, if Trump orders regime change by force, Venezuela's military will collapse within days, if not hours. The real question is whether Maduro's generals will fight for him when the time comes, or whether they'll cut a deal, hand him over, and save themselves. The Caribbean deployment has already achieved one major goal. It's shattered the myth of Venezuelan invincibility. Maduro can parade his militias and brandish his missiles, but everyone knows the truth. If America wants him gone, he's gone. What remains uncertain is whether the Trump administration is willing to pay the price, in lives, in money, in international legitimacy, to make that happen. September 4th, 2025. The day Venezuelan F-16s buzzed the USS Jason Dunham. In another era, that overflight might have triggered an international crisis. Diplomatic protests. United Nations resolutions. Perhaps even retaliation. But in 2025, it was just another day in the Caribbean standoff. The US Navy didn't fire back because it didn't need to. The silent reply was the presence itself. The amphibious assault ships, the destroyers, the cruisers, the submarines, the fighters, the bombers. A message delivered not with missiles, but with overwhelming, undeniable power. The lesson of this confrontation isn't about what happened. It's about what didn't. The United States could have shot down those F-16s. Venezuela could have fired anti-ship missiles at American warships. Either action would have started a war. Instead, both sides chose restraint, not out of fear, but out of calculation. Because both sides understand that modern warfare isn't just about firepower. It's about leverage, psychology, the ability to threaten without pulling the trigger. The US Navy's silent reply to Venezuela's boldest move wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Show the capability. Demonstrate the reach. Let the adversary imagine what comes next. And hope they choose surrender over suicide. As of late October 2025, the standoff continues. American warships still patrol the Caribbean. Venezuelan militias still drill in the streets of Caracas. The bounty on Maduro's head still stands at $50 million. No one knows how this ends.